Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, regardless of where you are. It's always a good time to learn about Spiritism and have conversations about the spiritual world, about reincarnation, about so many other interesting topics. Thank you for joining the Spiritist Talk series, which is promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation. We meet here every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I am delighted today to host this talk which is going to be presented by Anisio Resem. Anisio, welcome.
Thank you
And
very much,
Anisio,
Glaucio.
oh yeah, sure. Anisio, you're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, which is exploring the book uh, um, um, Among Brothers of Other Lands. It's a
Mhm.
well-known book in Portuguese, and it's been available in English as well. So I'm going to talk. Um, of course, let's give you a very warm welcome. And allow me to introduce you for those who have not met you before. So, Anisio Resin is a co founder and the current president of the Spiritist Society of San Diego. He has been active in the Spiritist movement for more than 25 years. Mr. Resem has collaborated and studied at institutions like the Spiritist Federation of the State of Sao Paulo and the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center of Campinas, both in Brazil. He has studied and practiced mediumship within the Spiritist framework for more than 20 years. Anisio has a degree in electrical engineering with specializations in business management and software engineering. Again, Anisio, welcome and thanks for taking some time of your busy schedule to be with us. And also take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation and in the chat window regardless of what social media application you're using. Anisio has reserved some time in the end to address any comments or questions after he concludes his presentation. Anisio, thank you again very much, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Glaucio. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys, and I hope we can give you. I mean, if you have not heard or if you not have read the book, give you enough reasons to consider it. And we have so many teachings, so many interesting points that are discussed in this book, and I hope we cover some of them, and we give a somewhat fair representation of what it means. And just let me, as I start, and Klausi was being so kind and doing the presentation. It has been a while since I've been working with Spiritism, and so in this book, we have some gems about mediumship as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to uh, pick some of the, especially the interviews that were done and documented in this book, and try to describe a little bit um, um, what they're talking about, and try to go a little deeper in some of the consequences what the spirits told us. But let me just give you. I mean, I'm not sure if this book is as well known as it deserves. Right? I still talk to a lot of spiritists, and this is not usually when I mention the book. So people quite often are surprised, or they're not even aware of the existence of the book. So let's see if we change that a little bit, work towards changing that. Here's the thing: Chico Xavier, at the time working with Waldo Vieira, uh, um, uh, there was two trips, I think, to the United States and to Europe that happened in 1965 and 1966, right? And Chico, the first time, 1965, they spent like something like 6 months. I don't know exactly. I'm not the best person to talk about the details of those voyages and what they did. This is an amazing. I haven't found anybody publishing a book about that or anything, but it would be interesting to get, if you want to check Chico's biography. That might be an interesting topic to cover. We're gonna just glance at that today, but the book is a sort of a compilation to what happened in the first trip, 1965, right? About 6 months between the United States and Europe, and those messages that all the messages that have been captured in this book, they are were received while the mediums, both of them at the time, Chico Xavier and Waldo Vieira, were in either United States or in Europe, right? And look at this. That one thing I would like to call your attention is that this was clearly a work done guided by the spiritual realm, in a sense that they were concerned or aware of the potential usefulness of having the work of Chico Xavier manifest in English. It did not work out at the end of the day, so Chico was not able to establish a continuation of that work. And this is for another discussion, but but I think there's a value there, right? And we should meditate about that as well. I don't know what this is a question for us to meditate later. What would have happened if Chico had a platform to continue his work in English? What would have happened to the Spiritist movement? We don't know, and it's hard when it's just a speculation. So, but let's do it. Okay. As we talk about this, the first part of the book that I would like to bring to focus here is the interview with William James. So here's Andre Luiz's spirit, and here's the thing: the group of spirits that work with Chico Xavier also came to America. I know we have this notions of the spiritual realm being like a place that is all connected, or is only one place, and that's not the case at all. The life in the spiritual realm, actually, our life on the flesh, is a mirror of the life in the spiritual realm, and there are cultural elements, and there are countries, and there are civilizations, and there's a difference between them. So there's which means the group that actually was working with Chico Xavier, Andre Luis, Emmanuel, also came to America, and they were interacting with spirits that work with us here in the United States, right? And some of those conversations are very interesting. So they happen in the spiritual realm, and the conversation is captured there. And so we have access to it through the publication of this book, right? First one I would like to talk about is the interview with William James, which is a famous studios of parapsychology. He did a lot of work with mediums, especially Leonore Piper, which is a very well-known medium in the United States, right? And Andre Luis had a conversation with him. And through that conversation, we can get a lot of insights. Like, first, for instance, we tend to continue working after we move to the spiritual realm, we tend to keep working in the things we were working on in physical life. In William James's case, he was studying parapsychology and studying mediumship. He continued that work after, right? I was having this conversation with my younger one, and he's struggling right now with math in high school, and he goes to the Spiritist youth, right? And we have a discussion, and I told him, well, maybe this is the first life you were dealing with this kind of math. And he was told me, no, past life I was Einstein. and I told him, well, what did you do with the theory of relativity? And he like, what? So of course, we continue our experience life after life. We don't change. We are a continuous being that lives life after life, right? And although we forget our past lives, and this is good for us, this is for a different discussion, but it's good for us because we probably didn't use the best. We have a lot of traumas that we benefit if we forget. Our mind is the same. So if you had studied math before, chances are, even if that's not part of your current life, if you're not part of your plan, you naturally would remember those concepts, and you would look, and just with a quick review, you would get it, right? That's because the knowledge is already in your mind. But if you look at math and it looks like Greek, looks like something completely ineligible, you cannot figure out what's going on, chances are this is knowledge that you have not acquired yet spiritually, right? So it's good and bad, and that's why we have to expand in knowledge. That's why no matter where we are in our physical life, expanding our knowledge is always positive. It's always enriching our spirits, if not for this life, for the next one. Any knowledge that we acquire is ours, right? He talks about the importance of science in providing the proof of afterlife. So one of the major milestones that I think is supposed to happen this century, and is the fact that we're very close from a scientific perspective to prove or to meet, to find the the continuation of the mind, right? And this is something we're going to need science to work on. And many students, I think many spirits are reincarnating with that goal, right? Because it's going to make a big difference. In spiritism, we work with that already, right? So we don't need to wait for science to do that, because we're working with that today, right? We're already basing our moral transformation and how we guide our lives right now, knowing that life never ends, right? That life continues, right? But we need, and this is going to happen sooner or later, we need science to step up and actually manifest that. And he acknowledges that in this interview with Andrea Luiz, that this is going to be an important factor, right? We should collaborate with science as much as we can, right? As long, so in terms of our movement, Spiritist movement, we should collaborate with science as much as we can, as long as we don't deviate from our goal, which is the moral improvement of the being, right? Which is the transformation, the inner transformation of a more loving, compassionate being, right? That's the real goal of Spiritism, right? Our inner transformation, our inner growth. And as a secondary, yes, so we should, do our part to collaborate with the development of science in whatever fields we can possibly collaborate, right? One important thing, especially when we are, and this is, of course, the whole point of the book, is to prepare the spiritists to when interacting with different when different communities in different countries, different societies, right? Is what it means is Spiritism. It's funny because in this book, you notice that Kardec, for instance, asks, Kardec, sorry about that. That's a habit of the study groups. Andrea Luiz asks, William James about the knowledge about Spiritism, right? And Spiritism means different things. When we're inside the Spiritist movement, right? When we think about Spiritism, we think about the movement. The Brazilian movement is very strong in Brazil right now, and we are part of through the United States Spiritist Federation. So but for spirits, this movement is not quite the same meaning, because when they talk about Spiritism in many situations, what they mean is the Enlightenment movement. That's, I think, a mission for our planet to transform, to bring the knowledge of life after life, reincarnation, right, mediumship, to the mainstream. That's the third revelation. That's the mission that I think we have been given, and is the plan of for our planet, right? Is to enlighten ourselves, right? We believe that that's a direction from Jesus himself, right? We're in the moment of awakening, right? So this is happening everywhere. It's not just, we're part of that. The Spiritist movement is part of that, but it's happening everywhere on the planet in many different forms. So in the case of the United States, this is sometimes called a spiritualist. The modern spiritualist movement is going to come out in other parts of the book as well, right? He emphasizes as well, William James, the importance of education of mediumship. Mediumship is everywhere. Mediumship is something natural, right? It's ability, it's like intelligence, right? So we don't own mediumship in the Spiritist movement. We study, we educate it, but mediumship is a human ability, right? So it really needs education as as any other human ability would need to. He mentions that as well. And there's a very interesting discussions about how much higher spirits need the course of mediums to support their work. And there's a very interesting sentence that he says, yes, until science establishes the exchange between free exchange between the two realms, right? Here he points out to something we discuss sometimes in our study groups, and I think it's unavoidable. Right now, in our current state, right? So we need mediums to have any sort of interaction with the spiritual realm, right? We need somebody to be sensitive and to channel, right? But is that going to be the case forever? No. The same way is very hard to, imagine yourself going back in time, 200 years maybe, not even 300 years is enough, and try to explain to someone back then a cell phone, right? A box that you speak into, and you can talk to anyone anywhere in the world. You would have a hard time to explain that to anyone living 2 centuries ago, maybe even 1 century ago, right? We will have eventually devices that will allow us to communicate with the spiritual realm, right? It will be a natural consequence once we discover, or once we uncover from a scientific perspective, that the life continues, right? That will come naturally. How those devices are going to look like and how they're going to be implemented, I have no idea exactly how we're going to do it, right? But the certainty is that it will happen. So generations to come in the future will use mediumship or the communication with the spiritual realm in a very similar way as we use our telecommunication devices of today, right? This is not closed though, right? So we probably, hopefully, it would be great to see during I would be very glad to see that during my physical life on Earth, but I wouldn't hold my breath. This might take a little longer for this to happen, but it will. It's a certainty, right? And William James actually brushes into the challenges of mediums, and I really like the way he put it. Mediumship is widespread in terms of a faculty. Many humans have it, but the challenge for the medium, one of the most difficult things, according to William James, is the companions we keep. Is keeping the companion of good spirits. It's who your friends are, right? And the vast majority of us mediums, we tend to get stuck with the physical realm, with the things of the material realm, and we end up losing the companion of those that are there to elevate, and that's the major cause of challenge for mediums in general, right? It's so difficult to be accomplished in terms of spiritual growth, in terms of using mediumship as a leverage to spirituality, right? He touches a little bit on the discussion about the physical effects or the intelligent effects. So some people still nowadays, maybe less today, but when we discuss about mediumship, many people bring why don't we do physical phenomena to prove the existence instead of using science? Prove through mediumship, right, the existence of the soul through the phenomena, through the physical phenomena. Kardec studies that a lot in the Medium's book, right? And we know that this happens everywhere. And he actually this physical phenomena doesn't seem to be very capable of making the inner transformation, right? The type of mediumship that's more conducive to the inner transformation, to the moral growth, is the one that talks to our mind, to our reason, right? Instead of the visual, physical spectacle that tends to just entertain the eyes but not touch the soul, right? So that's why the focus has changed for the most part to what Kardec calls the intelligent phenomena, that where we're working the most. Right? It's not that the physical phenomena doesn't happen; it happens. You will find it everywhere. It's a natural occurrence, but it's not the focus of our movement in any, I think, movement of spiritual growth on Earth. Right? The use of mediumship. He mentions the use of mediumship, and this is a spirit. Remember, this is William James, embedded in a worker of the spiritual movement in the United States and in Britain. And in his opinion, the use of mediumship, where it can benefit the most, is especially in today's society that's so lacking of spiritual understanding, right, is to bring that enlightenment to understanding spirituality, understanding that we don't die, right, and to treat one of the problems that is unknown. Is we talk a lot in the Spiritist movement about obsession, but we treat it, as Kardec put it, as a disease, right? As a form of disease that we go through, and science has not even entertained this possibility yet, right? And this is one of the major spiritual problems we have right now in our society, right? So mediumship can be used for that treatment, and it's probably one of the best uses. I totally agree with him, and beyond that, right? And he touches one of the important lessons about language, right? Language. And here's the thing for us: it's a theme that's going to happen several times during this book, and is mentioned. When we study Spiritism, yes, we understand that the language of um, thoughts are transferred between spirits, right? So eventually, we will communicate through thought. Our ideas will be conveyed through thought to each other, right? But what we forget many times is that we're not in a spiritualized planet. So this is, for the most part, a materialized planet. And he mentions in his conversation with Andrea Luis that the vast majority of us, spirits of earth, the vast majority of us, as we discarnate, we stay in our domestic circles, right? We stay, and we stay attached to the same ideas, to the same problems. In many cases, we cannot let go of the life we just finished, right? And in that situation, we are not yet capable of having this detachment of thoughts and project ourselves in that way. So language becomes very important. I am even attached to that language, right? Uh, I have the opportunity to work with mediumship for some time in different countries, and it's so often happen. It's quite often. I mean, it's quite often to see that in the work we do, we deal with people, right? Spirits, which are just people, right, like us, that are very attached to their language, right? And they want to keep the conversation, even though they can understand it. It's amazing because if I mean, for those that study mediumship, so the medium can decode it. So they decode through the mind of the medium, whatever language they want to, but they struggle because it's not local to them. So language is an important component in an environment like ours, where the majority of spirits, when discarnate, are still attached to their domestic circles. So learning the language and speaking in a language that is familiar to the person potentialize our help, right? And this is a very important discussion because, yes, eventually languages won't be important because thought will be the transfer. But that's not the reality we live in. That's not the reality of Earth at this point in time. So learning the language and communicating in a language that's accessible to the individuals in my region is fundamental, right? And his opinion about what can we do to improve the Spiritist movement is just time and goodwill, right? It depends on us. So we have all, God has given us all the resources. So it just, gives us the well, the stimuli, right? So to be, we will be the ones making Spiritism what's deserved. Okay, so that was a little longer than I thought, but we would go. But let's see how much we can cover. I don't think I'm going to be able to cover all the topics I was planning to, right? Because we still have two more interviews I would like to cover. But we'll cover as far as we go with the time we have. And remember, this is just a taste. I would really recommend you to have access to the book itself. And there's the Portuguese version, if you can read Portuguese. There's the English version as well. It has been translated, which is thankful. So we have both. So you have access to the book, no problem, right? The second interview I would like to talk about, it was an interview that was conducted by Brother X, actually, which is the pen name of Humberto de Campos, a spirit that is part of the Spiritist movement in Brazil, channel many books through Chico Xavier. And he interviewed a spirit. He mentions Miss Hayden, which is apparently might not necessarily be a famous spirit during the physical life, but she is famous in the spiritual realm. So Humberto de Campos interviews this spirit. Humberto de Campos' spirit interviews this spirit in America that seems to be a mentor or involved into the work of mediumship inside the many churches and temples and movements of related to spirituality in America. And they have a very good, interesting conversation, right? And I would like to highlight some of the points I found in this interview with Ms. Hayden. Not in places though, reading the whole thing over there in the book. I'm just going to pick a few of them, right? So she's a mentor in America. So she's not in part of what we call the traditional Spiritist movement in Brazil. She works with spiritualist churches in America, whatever the scope of mediumship happens, right? And here goes. she mentions that she agrees that mediumship is not yet properly understood, right? And we are still struggling to understand the phenomena, right? But she emphasizes that notion that mediumship is neutral, right? Mediumship is a natural ability of human beings, and it can be used for anything good, like intelligence. Intelligence is neutral; is your ability to process information in a useful way. But you can use it for a constructive or destructive way. It's your choice, right? Mediumship itself is neutral as any other human ability, right? Um, uh, there's a few for some reason Humberto de Campos questions the possibility of have some sort of centralized control in the material realm about mediumship, and I love her answer, right? So like having some sort of institution that controls mediumship for all, and that sounds really bad to me, and she agreed with that. It says, like, can you imagine if humans control, like what happened with religion in the past when we had one institution controlling everything, like, and she gave a fantastic example. Imagine if one human institution controlled the light of the sun. Unfortunately, we're not morally evolved enough to do that. What happens is we start using that in ways that are unthinkable, political, and whatever. So, and it's interesting that Humberto de Campos' spirit thought about that, and her answer is a pretty interesting. And that's exactly the way the Spiritist movement works. If you think about it, we don't have a centralized control. We each Spiritist center, to a certain degree, has a wide ability, a wide range of choices, which causes problem for us sometimes in our movement, because when you visit the Spiritist center, you never know what you're going to find, because can be quite different. But they're very robust in terms of there's no way a political transformation or a political control can be established, because there's so many different groups. So any group that develops a good understanding and practice of charity will be able to achieve a tremendous work. So that's why you have to find a spirit group that you connect, right? Be mindful about that, right? For those that are more familiar with the movement, this will be interesting. But for those that are not, so don't when you visit for the first time a spiritist group, be aware that it's very hard to know exactly what you're going to find, because each group is unique in that sense. So it's very important to be aware of the teachings, though, because those are the same, right? The Kardec books, the André Luiz collection, and among brothers of other lands, right, as a good source of information about Spiritism as well, right? Yeah, Humberto de Campos is very concerned about especially with the challenges that mediums, spirits, people that come to Earth with the mission of fostering mediumship, right? And he's sort of, in a way, frustrated, because there's so many people that promise, we make plans to make mediumship with love and compassion and foster spiritual growth. And when we come to Earth and we live here, when we start hitting the material realm, we forget about that, and we go different paths and we go different ways. And she's not, I mean, what she points out, Miss Hayden, is that this is not just a case of mediumship. It's actually, this is a case everywhere, in science and philosophy, in politics. A lot of us, we made amazing plans. No, actually, I would say that pretty much nobody makes plans to come to Earth and fail, right? We have lofty goals. We want to come here and grow spiritually, right? When we are outside of the flesh, we understand much better what really makes us happy or not, and we make choices accordingly. The problem is when we hit the flesh and we face the passions, the hormones, the whole. We go back to old habits, and we sort of step aside of what the plan we created for ourselves. But this is true not just for mediumship or mediums. This is true for humans in general. But that's the characteristic of our planet. That's why we're still in an environment where still we have a lack of spirituality, a lack of understanding of the laws of nature as it pertains to the spiritual realm, right? That are pretty much well covered in the gospel, right? That's why love thy neighbor as yourself. It's still something that doesn't resonate with our society as a whole, right? She recommends as well. The Spirit recommends for us in the Spiritist movement, right, the importance of separating the phenomena, the spiritist phenomena, the like for instance mediumship, right, with spiritist movement. So this is very important for us spiritists. We don't own the phenomena. Mediumship is something human. We educate the phenomena. What we provide, framework we have in spiritism is a way to educate it. But don't be fooled by thinking that we own mediumship. Nobody owns mediumship. Mediumship is a human ability. That's it. Everybody has it. Everywhere in the planet, everywhere you go, mediumship is there because it's wherever humans are, mediumship is, right? But we provide a framework to a productive, a proposition of work to mediumship. And for instance, she mentions as well in when she describes our movement, right, that essential topics like the survival of the soul, the afterlife, right, evolution, reincarnation, the destiny that awaits us in the spiritual realm, the suffering and the justice, reach people, that we should focus. And this is kind of this is the gospel. That's why Jesus, right? Why we should focus this, to make it accessible to the people wherever we are, and not emphasizing so much in either academia or the symposia or whatever formal movements that we have to reach the people wherever they are, right? Wherever the people, those pieces of information should reach everyone, right? This is a very good point that she's making, right? In my opinion, right? Humberto Campos focused a little bit on the problems of mystification in mediumship, when and she is not very concerned. I mean, mystification is in theory when you have an intentional modification of the teachings that a medium is receiving, right? And she, from the other side, from the spiritual realm, she discusses that this is a very much more complex issue than we think, because there's a lot of factors. Very seldomly, according to her, mediums really intentionally disguise, intentionally change the meaning of their messages. Most of the time, is conditioning, is social standings, is even obsession, right? There are another components that end up being part of that message being changed, right? So we shouldn't judge so harshly, right? Those that cannot convey messages in the proper way, right? So that's what she was much more lenient towards that. It's a more complex issue than we think in the material realm, right? And that's kind of those are the highlights from this interview with Miss Hayden, right? There's one more here that actually there's many more, but one more. There's an interview with that was done by actually Humberto de Campos as well, Brother X, with Horace Greeley. He is a very well-known spirit in this past life. Oh, I think it's his past life, probably. And he was the founder of the New York Tribune, a very well-known publisher in New York, right? And here's this scenario, is so interesting, right? This is like Humberto de Campos was trolling. I mean, spirit, right? We're talking. This is all scenery in the spiritual realm. We're being described. Those interviews are actually happening in the spiritual realm, but they're being reported to us, right? Through the mediumship of Xavier and Waldo Vieira at the time, right? Right. So what's happening is that Humberto Campos is just strolling, going by the Central Park, which is a beautiful part of New York, Central part of New York, and he actually bumps into Horace Greeley, right? It was there, and he starts on interacting with him and talking to him about the Spiritist movement and the spiritualist movement, right? And really has a very interesting concept for us. He describes a thing about static and dynamic Christianity, right? This is specific to us in the United States, right? Well, maybe more, but I'm going to speak on that scope, right? Static and dynamic Christianity, a very interesting concept. So he compares this static Christianity is this praising, is this where we is this mindset where we see Jesus as something to praise, the Savior, right? The entity that will actually lead us out of the way, but in a passive way. So I believe in Jesus, and Jesus will save me, right? He calls that static Christianity, right? And he now compares with what he sees the what we have in Spiritism, which is he calls dynamic Christianity, right? And in dynamic Christianity, what he means is dynamic Christianity is you moving towards Jesus. It's our self transformation. It's we being agents of change, and Jesus as a model, right? The gospel as the model for us to follow, right? So it's our own transformation, and he emphasizes the importance of that concept and how blessed we are in the Spiritist movement, right? To have the clear notion of dynamic Christianity. We are supposed to move. We are supposed to transform ourselves into um, loving beings. We're not going to be saved, right? We're going to be saving ourselves through the teachings, through the guidance. What we have is a light on our path, right? That the transformation is still us, ours to be done, right? And in static Christianity, you're saved, you're passive, and he emphasizes that as a major factor that helps us especially in the Allan Kardec Kardec's inspired spiritualist movement, which is Spiritism, right? So, and he actually praises Kardec in the sense that Kardec was able to keep his loyalty to the higher spirits. So it was we know how hard it was for Kardec to sustain that, but in his opinion, that was a great thing, and we all benefit from that amazingly, right? He mentions 2 points, and one is this about the dynamic Christianity as very important points that we should consider, in that the Spiritism from the Allan Kardec movement brings to the table here too. One is the dynamic Christianity, right, that we already mentioned, and the second one is the non-paid mediumship. It's very clear in the Kardecian codification, even chapter 26 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, right? That we shouldn't do mediumship as a service, as a material service, right? So as a paid mediumship, we should be part of your. And it's a very difficult discussion for all of us in our Spiritist center, especially here in America, where that's so typical and it's very well. And here I'm going to try to say a few words, and I'm not going to try to settle the topic. This is something we're going to have ongoing, right? I think the reason why the spirits are very clear when they try to separate mediumship from the material realm, from the material problems, it's for the protection of the medium. It's not a forbidden. If you want to do it, that's fine, right? If you want to have a mediumship as a profession, and many people do, and that's fine. But what you're going to notice is that, unfortunately, because mediumship is such a challenge on Earth, especially on Earth, because there's so many unenlightened beings around us, because our lack of spirituality in general so far, right? The medium has to endure such a painful process when he does the right thing, when he tries to do goodness and manifest compassion all around him. It's so difficult that when you mix the component of the material remuneration there, it makes your job almost impossible. I'm going to give you a simple example. All right? Simple example, right? All of us, we have bills to pay. All of us, we have to sustain us materially, right? Right? We have, this is part of our, our material life, and it's supposed to propel us to work, right? But every time we are pressured in that sense of the material, we are affected, right? We're affected. For instance, if you're a medium, a professional medium, what is the price you charge for your services? The question of price is super difficult, right? How much you charge? Because how much comfort you need in your life? Do you need how big of a house you need? You need a 2,000 square feet house, 4,000 square feet house. You need how many cars in your garage? You need summer house. You see, all those decisions are material, right? And they're all good. But once you mix the spiritual one, right, those pressures always come to your work. How can you say something to a client, to a great client of yours, that won't be what he or she wants to hear, right? It's very difficult to do that when you have your own financial well-being in line, right? We even have that in our Spiritist centers, right? If you have a Spiritist center and you have a major donor that actually supports most of your spending of your group, it's difficult to, if the donor is not growing spiritually as we should, it's difficult to tell the donor exactly what's happening, right? Because you know what's going to happen with your Spiritist center, right? Isn't it amazing? And that's not even, it's a tiny bit of a problem. Imagine, so that's the guidance to a the guidance to non remunerated mediumship is for the medium, is to make the work of the medium possible. It's not forbidden. It's not forbid anything, right? It's to make your work more possible. It might be not be, given all the challenges we're going to face on Earth, it might not be possible to do it without that, right? And that's his point. Horst really makes this very clear, right? Let's work together. That's the message he finishes. Like a few. Okay, so we're kind of running out of time now, and but what I'm gonna say, I'm gonna pick one of the conversations. There's so many great messages from Emmanuel, from Chico Xavier, about that's directly to us, the workers, right? So like Emmanuel is very clear on an item on the topic 18 about non-destructive ego, the personality, the egos that are so destructive, well, to us in general, prevent our spiritual growth. He's very clear in the crop of the spirit. There's no space for that, right? There's no space for that, and that's very much the self-transformation of we all have to work on, right? To remove our egos from our spiritual growth, right? A lot of passages reinforces in the case of language, of improving ourselves in terms of vocabulary, in terms of whatever place we're in, right? Whatever community we were called to work on, to really improve our vocabulary, the way we communicate, our resources, that over time will make us better instruments in our work, right? And I can imagine. The book has two parts, right? So we have the first part where messages were psychographic in Portuguese, right? And then there's a second part of the book where the messages were psychographed in English, right? And they're great messages, especially for those that check, like for instance, the English messages. They're pretty good, right? And imagine if this work had continued. Imagine if there were more visits and more work, and Chico had spent more time in I don't. Well, I leave to you, right? What could have happened if we had a medium of that caliber, of that dedication and work? You writing more materials directly in English, right? Okay. I'm not going to have time to cover it, but I would really recommend you read the conversation that Humberto de Campos the thing had with Rabbi Zor ben Ozias. He uses the parable of the talents, the famous parable of the talents from Jesus in the gospel, right? And he brings it to the times of the day in mentioning the spiritual knowledge. I'm not going to have time right now to tell it, because I want to mention the interview with Gabriel Denladani a little bit. And I suggest you read, it's the topic 30 in the book Among Brothers of the Other Lands. And he makes a very interesting transformation, a change of the pair of the talents. For those of you that are not familiar, when God gave like 5 talents to someone, so servants 2 to another, 1 to another, and then I mean, you know what it is. He changed it to make it so that includes the understanding of Spiritism. It's a pearl, it's a gem. So I do recommend you guys read it and have a look at it. Okay. I want to mention a little bit the interview with Gabriel Deladani, right? Spirit, right? Deladani is one of the contemporaries of Allan Kardec and continued his work after Kardec passed away, right? And André Luiz actually spoke to him interviewed him in the spiritual realm, and Andre Luis actually thought the Spiritism is going slow, and Delaney had a very interesting Gabriel Delaney had a very interesting approach, saying that sometimes we in general think Spiritism is not moving fast or is not doing a lot and should do much more, and it should, but we should be put in perspective. We should put in perspective that Spiritism is a very young movement. So we just celebrated a few years ago 150 years. But so as a movement, we're very young. So from his perspective, yes, there's way more we can do, but we should be praised. I mean, there's for a spiritual movement. Think about the spiritual movements we know about all over the world. They are millennia. We're talking about millennia. We have Buddhism and Hinduism that have been around for long. Just put things in perspective, right? He also has a discussion about the physical phenomena and help with spiritual renewal, and why the intelligent phenomena is the focus today, not so much the physical phenomena, right? The practice of again, he reinforces the idea about mediumship as being practiced to our fraternity and guidance to humanity, and again, so this is a team between all the spirits, right? So how much they emphasize that the tool is designed where we find the most illuminating, enlightening goal for mediumship is to suit the suffering of humans, is to show the spiritual path, show the growth, show the path for spiritual growth, right? That's where you find the most enlightening path for those that practice mediumship, right? And he mentioned a little bit the challenges we have, because mediumship is neutral, right? And especially for mediums that allow themselves to be involved with the lower tendencies, right? They become, to a certain degree, propagators of teachings that are less fortunate, right? And we have that a lot, but we have that a lot in all times. It's part of being in a world of probations, right? So we will have this information in all directions, and so we should strive to do. We shouldn't be discouraged by that, right? So that's the natural process of spiritual growth that we will have to endure on Earth, right? Item 1 is the recipe when Andre Luis lists line by line all the requirements for us to study that think of propagating or representing Spiritism outside of where we're born, outside of where we came from, right? And he goes line by line, right, of what to do, and they're all common sense, but it's important to write it. So if you are thinking about propagating Spiritism in another place other than you brought, right? We're talking. I guess there's a lot of Brazilians that think about that. Read chapter 1, line by line, the first item, and you have a very good guideline for what to do and not to do, right? And to close, on the item 20, so Emmanuel, as of many of the messages that are part of the book, he emphasizes the work always. And this is, I guess, part of the dynamic spiritual Christianity that the spirits mention. Work is the way we're going to grow spiritually, right? And don't confuse, like, sometimes work with a job. Work is the productive activity we do regardless of the space we're in, right? The job is many times where we get our income, right? So to sustain ourselves in a material life. But work is never ending. We are here to emphasize the manifestation of our ideas and transform ourselves. And that's fundamentally work we should do. And that has nothing to do other than with our own spiritual growth. And it's for us, for ourselves. So that's the stimuli that Emmanuel gives us. And I suggest you guys read item 20 of Work Always from Emmanuel, Spirit Emmanuel. And with that, I think I think we're good. for the general exposure. I hope I got at least you guys interest, if you haven't read the book yet, at least interested in having a look at it.
Thank you, Anisio. That was very interesting. Yeah, that was like a sample, like some samples from the book.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we appreciate it. And of course, those are the reflections, and especially some of the points from different interviews. Those are very valuable. So again, thank you. Before we move on into the Q&A session, I have some short announcements to make. So the first one here is there's a new virtual course called Introduction to Mediumship. It is a free virtual course for beginners. The U.S. Spiritist Federation is thrilled to invite individuals eager to explore the realm of Spiritist communication according to Spiritism, like Anisio, like you mentioned in the book, which doesn't belong just to Spiritism. It is a universal, it is a human fact, factor. So you can check the course at learn.spiritist.us, or you can also scan the code that is shown on the flyer. Also, save the date for the 18th Spiritist Symposium. It's going to be on September 1st, 2024 in Boston. And the theme for this year's symposium is Life Through the Lens of Immortality, Philosophy of Spiritism. Again, save the date for this very special event. We have a podcast-like series, Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, which is based on the works by Joanna De Angelis. And there's a new episode every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is also available on YouTube and Spotify. The Spiritist also, the U.S. Spiritist Federation offers the Spiritist app, Be My Hope, and it's available now on the Apple Store or Google Play. And this app provides uplifting content in collection of videos, daily messages, and audio materials. So you can download it now. And on the screen, there's the QR code in case you want to help the U.S. Spiritist Federation produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone. It is available there. And again, before we start with the interaction, just a reminder that you still have time to provide any additional questions or comments that you'd like to our friend Anisio here to comment for you to discuss. So that's it. Let's dive right in. So this one comes from the U.S. Spiritist Federation, Anisio. How can we overcome the resistance of our evangelical friends to discuss Spiritism?
Right, and that's a very very good question. And here's the thing. In the, I think it's the very first topic when chapter item 1 of the book. So it's and there always mentions that we do not doctrinate, we do not convert, right? So it's a fundamental thing for us that we shouldn't be concerned with the people that don't want to talk to us about the phenomena, right? Because everybody has a different timing, and we should not violate any consciousness, right? And if a person doesn't want to hear what we're saying, it's his or her choice, right? And remember, and this is something that we discuss a lot sometimes in our groups, and I think it's very clear when the spirits mention here, not conversion, is that the work of spiritual enlightenment is not ours, it's God's. It's not our obligation to transform people. It's their connection with the divine. We are instruments, right? And we cannot be instruments of good if we're not practicing the good, right? So we should be. I think the focus on our work should be always in our own practice, in our own conduct, in the way we conduct ourselves in interacting with those beings, and respecting their positioning, right? Even though technically, let's say we consider, if you consider yourself, let's say everything that's in the Spiritist teachings is the absolutely truth in terms of what the universe is. Reincarnation, life after life, mediumship, all the phenomena. Imagine what we know, what we have in our teachings. It's exactly the way the universe is. We believe that's the case, but we cannot be 100% sure. I mean, of course, we should at least tolerate that there might be doubt. I mean, people think differently, right? But let's assume it is true. So we are the ones that are barriers of that truth. How we're going to use it? We're going to use this, to beat our, those that might not have that access to that or do not believe it. That makes us lack compassion, right? So respecting the other points of view is a fundamental practice of Spiritists, and repeats throughout the passages that the book in several, So truth is not. Jesus didn't say the truth all the time, and you'll be saved. That's not what Jesus said. What's in the gospel? Love thy neighbor as yourself. Not say the truth. Make them believe the truth. That's not the commandment, right? This is very important, right? Tolerate ideas that are different than yours, even if they are if you see them incorrect, and even you might be right. Sometimes we might not. Sometimes we might be wrong too, right? But respect that and allow them to manifest their beliefs in a fair way, right? We should be available, because once they see that we respect, once they see that we are compassionate beings, you'll be surprised that then people will come and interact with you. Be ready, and then when you're asked, right, stand up and bring the light, right? And then when you have the opportunity, right, talk about it, but never enforce, never violate any consciousness, right? We're not here to convert. We're here as a spiritual movement. We're here to make the light available. And this is a challenge in itself already. We have to make the knowledge available. It's going to be asked upon us, the Spiritist movement, if we did all we could to make it available. If somebody looks for us, we better show up, right? But we're not going to be liable by the choice of others, right? If they, by seeing the teachings, don't connect, that's not our responsibility. That's the work of God. That's God's the one taking care of all of us and guiding us. We should focus on our work, and our work is making it available. It's very important for us, right? I even have this conversation with my friends sometimes, and I call my lay friends, right? So we have all friends that are not spiritualized or don't connect with spirituality, but they know I do, right? They know I do, and I always make sure they understand where I am in terms of my spiritual beliefs, right? So, every time I have an opportunity, I mention, like, yeah, I'm crazy. I believe in life after life. I believe that we continue living. I believe mediumship. I believe, we lived before. And if this is, they know, but they are not interested, we move on, right? Because what you don't want to hear from your friends in the future, because what's going to happen to your friends right now? One day they're going to wake up. If this is true, if life after life is the way nature is, if reincarnation is the way nature is, one day what's going to happen to them? They're going to bump into it. And the only thing you don't want to hear from them is, you never told me about it. You never even mentioned to me. You're going to hear this from them. And by the way, on the other side, you might be 100 years from now when you were on the other side, and you meet your friends of today, and they look at you and they say to you, why didn't you share with me? That's a problem for you. Give them the opportunity. Make sure all the people around us know where we stand. Don't hide the lamp, right? But don't force them, right? Make sure they have in you the explanation, the talking, the understanding of a spiritual life. But if they're not interested, that's fine, right? But no, don't hear in the future, I never knew you were even Spiritist. I didn't even know you're a Spiritist. How many of us, we don't even talk about that, for fear of being, reproached or getting some sort of disadvantage wherever you are. So that you don't want to hear that in the future, right? Because that's going to put the blame on us. So we didn't make it available. We should make it available, right? Available. But we absolutely do not convert. It's not part of the Spiritist vocabulary. We don't convert people. We make the information available, right?
Excellent. Thank you for that
Yeah,
explanation.
yeah, yeah.
So, from our friend Daniel Santos, besides the language of the foreign country, are there other aspects of an immigrant person that an immigrant person needs to learn to be more useful in the dissemination of the Spiritist message?
Yes, right. Yeah, Anthony. Yeah, exactly, right. In fact, as we become integrated in our communities, in whatever communities we moved onto, right, we will, um, I think, naturally, we should seek to understand the cultural element, and and become active part of that society, right? And it's not just the language, although the language is a big part of it, because language, I have that joke, and I'm going to say the joke. I'm going to risk saying the joke here right now. So, but imagine someone that study Portuguese in the U.S. Right. So you study. I mean, a person that wants to go to Brazil and study Portuguese here for years, go to classes, and it's kind of considered kind of fluent, right? And he travels to Brazil, gets into a plane, lands in the airport, gets a cab. Well, now a Uber, right? And the first thing the driver tells him, and gringo, se você viajar na maionese, o gato vai subir no telhado. What I just said is a totally Brazilian cultural element that the language makes no sense because it's just a cat going on a roof, right? And talking about mayonnaise. That's that, right? But that's a thing that a Brazilian understands, right? I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of getting old now. I don't know if young Brazilians would understand what I just said, but I'm pretty much anybody my age or closer, we would understand, like, right? So this is cultural element. This is something that only living on being part of that community will make possible, right? And and this is actually something, if we this is our mission, if this is what we're going to dedicate ourselves to do, right, this is something should be part of it should be okay for us to engage ourselves in that culture. It's not easy. It's not easy because it's a difficult process, because we're letting go. Some people even feel that they are letting go of their own identity, and I don't think it is. I don't feel like that. I think you can keep your identity untouched, but you are making yourself a better instrument in the space God placed you, in the place where God placed you. If God placed you somewhere, right? If you're there, right? That's your mission is, right? And why not strive to be the best instrument in that space, right? In that space, if this is truly your mission, I think that's we should strive to become integrated in all ways possible, right? And of course, withstanding upholding all the values that we believe, right? Right, that's the fundamental, is the dynamic Christianity they talk about, right? Yeah,
Excellent. Thank you very much.
yeah.
Next question from TVC International, the International Spiritist Council. What can you say about the conversation of Brother X with Marilyn Monroe, the famous conversation that is in the book?
Yeah, so that conversation is not on this book, right? So the conversation with Brother X and Marilyn Monroe happened is captured in another book psychographed by Humberto de Campos. Which is the book? I forgot actually the title of the book. It's not on this one. Don't go looking for Among Brothers of Other for Marilyn Monroe here. You're not going to find it. It's not here. Uh, Here's the thing. All those famous characters, um, of course, they pose they are interesting, right? Because those are characters that we all know, we all met them. They're and it, to the point where those conversations raise our awareness of spirituality and help us in our guidance. That's the way to go, and I think they will happen as often as possible, right? But we also have to be careful, because in many circumstances, those that actually faced popular face being famous on earth, they struggle tremendously in the spiritual realm, right? Because the spiritual values don't necessarily match, right? It's actually a very difficult endurance, I think, for those that actually face this sort of experience in the flesh, right? because expectations are pretty high, and that's why people don't know what they're buying into when they, especially if you're a politician or something, if you're very famous, you have no idea, because this is going to come with you, it's going to go with you to the spiritual realm, and it can be a tremendous challenge if you are not spiritualized, if you're not strong enough to withstand um, the choices you made, or if you didn't make good choices as well, right? So it can be very difficult. So, but every time those messages are enlightening, I think that's the case. That he gives a report about her situation, and specifically talks about that it was not a suicide. I think there was about. It's an interesting for those interested in the phenomena. But if we could have put a note, I don't remember the book, and Estante de Vida, I think it's is the book. Is that right, Joel? I don't. It has been translated to English. I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure the book has been translated to English.
Yeah, so it's not been translated to English yet.
Right. So this is okay. So this is a book that actually will, you need Portuguese to read that specifically. It is where Humberto de Campos documented his interview with Marilyn Monroe. Right. Right. But it's not in this one.
Excellent. Thank you. Next one from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. How to leverage our experiences as spiritists from Brazil to best disseminate spiritism in other countries?
Amazing. That's what this book is written for. Right? And exactly. So it's a journey, right? It's a journey. Unfortunately, not all your experiences in Brazil will be used here. So here's the challenge. So depending on your community, the place where you put where God put you, right? The place where you are, the place you will have to adapt. There will be tremendous differences in terms of the perspective, cultural, the way you communicate, the way you organize your work. The challenges you're going to face are different, right? So the fact that you have had a long experience, for instance, in the Spiritist movement in Brazil, it won't translate immediately to when you engage to the Spiritist movement in another country, especially in the United States, or I mean that's true for any, because there is a cultural component that it will be very hard to manifest that. You will have to go to an adaptation and relearning and adjusting, right? And it's not an easy process. So people get very frustrated when they have worked a certain way, right? And they have done things and have been successful, maybe doing the way the way they do, and then they come and they try to implement that same thing, and it doesn't work at all, right? And this is not something that has to do only with spiritism. Any religion, all Brazilian religions, when they come out of Brazil, they struggle, right? Because every culture is unique, right? And there's a lot in this book. I mean, read this book. As I would say, read Among Brothers of other lands, right? And I think the message they give us is like it's a journey. And for those that are, especially if you're an immigrant, and I think I hope you guys agree with me, there's a lot of immigrants in this movement here, of course, right? Many of us came from Brazil. Immigration is not an easy business. People sometimes think that it's fun. It's great to move to the United States, for instance, but there's a huge transformation. There's a whole change in your life that's not necessarily all roses. Actually, can be quite difficult. There's a lot of things that comes. We move into a different society with different rules, different values, different approaches, and so in manifesting the work in Spiritism is no different. So it's a journey. So it's not a quick switch that you can flip. It's a journey.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much, Anisio. Thank you for sharing this. Of course, discussing the book and providing us your insights into it. So, and again, thank everyone to watch today. And so next time we will not be providing. We're not going to have our presentation next Saturday. We're due to the Memorial Day. However, on June 1st, we're going to have Jana Machado, who is going to be lecturing on the duties. So stay tuned for our upcoming lecture. Anisio, thank you very much again. And if you could be so kind to say the final prayer for us, we would appreciate
Sure,
it.
absolutely. So let's say, Mother, Father, God, Divine Creator. Thank you very much for all that has been given to us, for all the opportunities we receive every single day. Let us be aware of all the resources we have, all the things that work in our life that make possible our spiritual growth. Don't let us be distracted by the few out of place things. Don't let us focus our energy in what's not working, but instead realize that the universe is conspiring to manifest love all around us, just waiting for the moment we allow it to come into our hearts, into our minds, and our spirits. And with that in mind, we humbly ask permission to our mentors and guides, to our Master Jesus, the model, the example, the humble one, to close our work for this morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much.